Доброго дня, колеги.
Good afternoon, dear friends. Ukrainian Crisis Media Center continues its work, and today we discuss the state fund for regional development. 3 billion hryvnia per year. Is it efficient or not? These are money allocated from the national budget for the regional development. And today, our discussion involves Ms. Nadiya Bondarchuk, head of the Department on Priority Projects Implementation and Monitoring from the Ministry of Regional Development. We have Sergiy Mazur, head of Baltska community in Odessa region via Skype. Sergiy, can you hear us? Also via Skype, we have Ms. Valentyna Moskalenko, Deputy Director of Economic Policy Department and Head of Analysis and Strategic Planning Department from Lviv Regional State Administration. Also, we have Mr. Anatoliy Tkachuk, Deputy Director of Civil Society Institute, and Mr. Yuriy Tretyak, Deputy Director of the EU Project Support to Ukraine's Regional Development Policy. So now it looks like we know what does it mean, the state fund for regional development. Now we would like to know what does it mean, the regional funds or regional development funds. Mr. Anatoly, could you please explain to us? Ukraine had to tackle the regional policy immediately upon its establishment because Ukraine is a rather big state. It has huge disproportions between the regions and big differences between big psychological or cultural differences between the regions. And unfortunately, we did not do this, and this resulted in our failure to have a unified Ukrainian space on the territory of our state, and this resulted in what we have. We have annexed Crimea, we have occupied territories in the east. So the regional policy, this is the instrument of strengthening the state, and this also allows to create the even field for even space for life of all the people in the same territory. That is, irrespectively whether a person lives in the rural area or in a small or in a big city, the convenience of living is approximately the same. While the state policy determines the methods how this could be achieved, and the state regional and the state fund for regional development is a financial tool to do this. Unfortunately, after the Orange Revolution, we continued to separate the country to create two kinds of Ukrainians, and that's why in 2014 we found our country split. Soon after this, we have passed the strategic development document up to 2020, and now we have the special item in the budget, special article in the budget, which is item 24 prim, which sets the provision for establishment of this development fund. There is also the law about stimulation of regional development. This is actually the local law without framework law. When we passed this law partially, we used French experience without understanding how this should work. And the result of the passage of that law, we started to sign agreements between the government and the regions to stimulate regional development. But since there were no regional policy and no funds, this practice of signing contracts with the regions, this practice very soon ended. Actually, the Prime Minister before 2014 used to use this practice for promotion of some of his or her interests. Actually, this is partially seen as the instrument for development of depressive territories. In other countries, they can have up to 100 types of different problem territories, and for each problem territory, the government tries to find the best way of solution, because all the attempts to apply uniform approach, they failed. Actually, in practice, it is more practical to stimulate competitive advantages of the each region. And actually, we should make our policy person-centered. That is, to put a human being in the center of our policy and try to create condition for development of this person, for develop conditions for this person. This would allow to develop the region, and thus will be able to develop the community of local people, and thus, if the entire Ukrainian population in all the territories would stack with the same values and priorities in the regional development, then we will reach homogeneous population. How this is, this fund is aimed at the strategy of some specific oblasts, some specific regions. Each oblast, each region has its own strategy, and they all should be in line with the state strategy. Unfortunately, the overall governmental strategy is of more higher level, is more advanced than the local strategies. That's, for example, at the state level, at the national level, we have the most advanced approaches used now in the world, while the oblasts are able to produce something rather obsolete, based on obsolete principles. And when the Cabinet of Ministers passes both strategies, we in result have two documents which do not coincide with each other, which are not coherent. Moreover, that money that are allocated for the regions we do not allocate money for the comprehensive projects which allow to strengthen the national homogeneity of Ukraine. Valentyna, I would like to ask you, Anatoly, speaking about the state strategy of regional development up to 2020, you mentioned that all oblasts have their own strategies. What about Lviv Oblast? To which extent your strategy coordinates with the state strategy? Can you hear me? Lviv Oblast was almost was among the last oblast which part this document. We planned not for 7 but for 5 years. We developed it with the assistance of our local Institute of Regional Development. In the past, we benefited from the international technical assistance project. We have the strategy implementation plan for 3 years, and we hope that this year we will the regional council will pass this plan. We expect approval in the nearest future. As for the state regional strategy, as for the state strategy for the regions, we are fully coherent with it because at this stage of drafting, we coordinated with this our regional strategy with the state strategy. The issue for all the strategies is the implementation, to make them alive, not to remain on paper, not just to have them as a declaration at the level of regional authorities. We tried to fill our strategy with real projects which could be implemented with aid provided via a state fund for regional development. Quite often it's difficult to bring together our plans and budget allocations. We can easily plan something, but when it comes to the budget for all that implementation, it is always difficult. It's quite understandable because we always had limited funds for capital investments. Am I right when I understand that you plan more generally, more globally, but when it comes to funding, you immediately come to the level of very practical everyday things? We can dream about technical parks, etc., but when we come to practical things, we face the issues of lobbying, the issue of everyday practical things. In order to increase the number of strategic projects, we need to invest money first into some basic infrastructure. We cannot discuss social and economic development before having produced sufficient number of kindergartens which are well heated, not at the level of 9 degrees Celsius in the roof. But nevertheless, we try to plan our infrastructure projects for the future. Valentyna, how do you think the issue of apps and basic infrastructure, whether you did not allocate money for them at this stage of your strategic planning? We cannot plan specifically. For example, we plan generally to improve the school's infrastructure or to create a network of culture clubs in the rural areas. But we cannot plan this in more details for 3 years because each year brings new unexpected things. As for the small objects, we cannot plan for them. But actually, at later stages, it appears that these smaller objects, they attract the most money from our allocated fund. Now let's move to Odessa Oblast, from Lviv. And as far as I understand, that you also produces the community strategic plans, whether your Balta community has its development strategy.
So the roadmap that we follow, we look at the strategy we have and the strategy 2020 of our oblast. And we have 1 year, our community was created, and we work with the recommendations provided. And in 2017-2018, we will work on the comprehensive view how to develop our community. Our community is big, and there are many local problems and also many issues to resolve. That's why this is important to develop a proper strategy on this. There is state strategy and there is Odessa Oblast strategy. So you are planning your own strategy. Are these documents coordinated? Are they harmonized? Because your strategy should correspond to these 2 documents. Of course, there are some discrepancies, but they are minor, and we collect information, we systemize information, systematize it, and after adoption of the budget, of the state budget and oblast budget and city budget, and then we will be more active in writing the strategy, and they will sign. So did you have the opportunity to develop strategy of Odessa Oblast? No, we didn't participate. Thank you, Sergey. And now let's turn to the instruments of regional development. We announced State Fund of Regional Development. So in 2016, this was 3 billion hryvnias. This is big sum. Could you please tell us what this money is spent for? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. This money goes to different projects, and Valentyna said, we cannot say today about these funds that are envisaged for the development of the regions, It's not about just repair works or maintenance. If we look at previous years, state support appeared first subvention for social regional development, sustainable development of the region. We had it in, we have 1 billion, and this was big sum. And then each year they provided such subvention. In 2012, the Fund of Regional Development appeared, and the main holder was the Ministry of Finance. And the Ministry of Economy dealt with these funds, and it was 2012, 2013, and in 2014 this money was allocated, were envisaged in the budget, but then this money disappeared, and in the next year we didn't get any money, and starting 2015 the functions and organization of concerning these funds were delegated to the Regional Development Office, and the holder remained the Ministry of Finance of Ukraine. And starting 2016, we are the main holders and the ministry that provide the accompanying of this money. So what I want to say is that starting 2007, there were money provided for social development, and we didn't have overhaul repairs. And now in the Regional Fund of Development, a large number of money is for overhaul repairs of different facilities, replacing windows and repairing roofs. And this money cannot be directed for the projects that have to so we cannot even speak about it. This money should be allocated from the local budgets for this repair works and maintenance of facilities of social importance. And this money should be provided for the development of the regions. And we have few such projects, and there are 2 projects in Sumska Oblast. This is industrial parks, and in 2 projects there are due to the fund, the local government proposed to repair roads and to establish water supply to industrial parks, and that is being done. And also we have projects in Ivano-Frankivsk Oblast. There is a complex to create some project for tourism, and this money was not used fully because now it is winter and they didn't complete all the tasks. They used 400,000, and the rest they return to the budget, and then they will continue the next year. And we have the project in Slavyansk. So these are the projects that differ from reconstruction, overhaul repairs, and buying equipment, construction. So mainly these are long-term construction in the region. So the fund now do not correspond fully to the tasks they were before this fund. So we should solve this at the level of the regions, and we should deliver training, and the local government should submit such projects, and without training of specialists, without information about this fund, we won't get positive results, and nothing positive will come out of it. Nadiya, as I understand clearly, the projects that are submitted to the fund, they are, in the majority, are the projects for eating out. So they say that you can count good projects. There are just not many of such good projects. So if they submit the project, do you reject them? We discussed it with Yuriy Ivanovich yesterday, and there are some aspects that allow and need financing from the state budget, including construction projects. That should be included in the program. As Valentyna said, that should be a program of social projects, but they should take part in the competition, and they should get some money from the Fund of Regional Development. What they did, they carried out a contest in the regions. They submitted it to the fund. They got the necessary number of scores, but so we saw during the year that there were some faults in the mechanisms of assessment of these projects, in the assessment of the projects and the establishing of criteria. And this year we introduced the changes in the assessment criteria. They became more rigid, more correct. These are 5 criteria that are assessed by the members of the Regional Commission. And this criteria, they cannot be assessed subjectively. There should be objective assessment. That's why we believe that this year we will get better results, and there are such criteria. And so these are first criteria: participation of communities, the number of citizens, whether it is one community or several regions, several communities, innovative aspects of the project, and 5 to 20 scores, participation of local budget in the realization of the project, co-financing. The more co-financing, the better our scores. We understand the interest of community. We assess the interest of the community in such projects, and this is the criteria: social economic influence on community. So these are projects that have economic influence. They should be selected. And the 5th criteria, about the procedure. The interesting question is about the terms. You said about the example of Ivano-Frankivsk, when the project got 400,000 and 600,000 were returned, and then they can get them next year. And sometimes in December they repaired works, and they repaired roads. And in some communities they said that we have road repair works, and they said that they didn't expect such weather in December, but the weather can be forecast, and it is maybe it is connected with some procedures. When, for example, this project got financing at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year, the Ministry of Finance provide the document. Such they provide a location for a year, and 150,000 million starting April. In October 450 million, and in November 6 million, and in December 900 million. So and this influences the planning of works. It is impossible to implement these works without money, because this attracts the interest of law enforcers. Why it is so? That's why money should be allocated according to the established order. And why 900,000? Why they are provided in December? And we asked the Ministry of Finance to transfer this money to summer period, because the majority of works are carried out in summer. They increased the amount to so they provided 70 700 million for December. The Ministry of Finance explains that this is connected with the budget, that at the end of the year they have more than at the beginning of the year. We can ask Yuriy Tretyak. Maybe he can compare the practice, how it is done in the European Union and in Ukraine, the policy of regional development of the instrument of funding. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to say that the system of management of regional development that we are trying to build in Ukraine, we want it to be like in the European Union, because in the context of the European integration of Ukraine, we understand that without creation of such a system in Ukraine, we won't be able to get more and more opportunities, investment opportunities from European countries to develop our regions. Before answering your question, I would like to say several words about European regional policy, and then to share the opinion about what works and what does not work in Ukraine. I want to say that after creation of the European Union, those countries that were balanced in the economic development, and they saw that there are a number of regions that do not correspond to the average level of all those countries that got united. And in 1975, last year it was 40 years of the creation of the Fund of Regional Development in Europe. In 1975 it was created. And the European Union, if we look at the budget of the European Union, there are two key policies that are implemented in all the countries that are members of the European Union. This is a joint policy on agriculture concerning subvention to agricultural business, and key policy is the policy of the regional development, and also it is called cohesion policy. If we analyze this policy, they have clear rules that are implemented in all the cycles of implementation. First, there should be obligatory planning basis of regional development. In the European Union, this policy concerns not the countries, but the regions. And there are 272 regions who are in the framework of this policy have similar rules. So all the countries in the framework of these 272 countries, they implement all those rules because they got funding. So the assessment of the development in the context of such policy, they assess it through two main indicators, and as gross regional product and employment. And the goals of the European policy is to balance the development of the regions everywhere in all the regions in the EU, and this is reached. This region develops strategy of their development to show how they are going to develop and improve these indicators. And of course, this is mainly about economic indicators. If you look at 5 structural and investment funds that exist, there are 5 of them. It was started from the European Fund of Regional Development. These 5 funds, the funds that they distribute realizing this policy, about 70% of the funds of this fund, they are directed to the regions, the population of which is about 27% of the overall population of the European Union. So huge investment is made in those less capable regions, economically less capable regions, because they understand that if these regions will be able to create additional value that will be taxed, this profit will go to local budgets, and then this money will be realized for social and engineering infrastructure. We are speaking today. So mainly we are speaking about economic development of the regions that will yield and bring good results. And the key rules, there should be obligatory strategy of development, and the terms for the strategy of the cycle of regional policy, there's 7 years. Each 7 years, they should develop their strategy, each region should develop. And these funds starting this period, they provide information to all the countries and all the regions what funds will be allocated in the framework of this policy. So at the start of the planning, the regions clearly understand that the European Union plus co-financing is obligatory in the framework of this policy. They understand what funds they can get and what they can plan, and the strategies of their development, operational programs that are implemented in accordance with the strategy, they are clearly timed, and they do not have some sort of dreaming as they see in our regions, when our regions understanding, because the regional fund of the regional development, it provides forecast how to plan for several years and what amount of money will be allocated to each region, and there is a big plus. But they continue to plan 10 times more projects in their plans, and they should establish priorities for the money they are allocated. Then they will be able to achieve results. And if they planned many priorities, but there is lack of money, so there is a mechanism that is called the manual mode, when those people who influence the choice of the projects that can be financed, they choose not priority projects that can yield economic growth, but they provide money for other projects. And we heard about that. So there should be planning based on real funds that really exist. Can I ask? It's a basic question, and Anatoly wanted to comment later. Okay, basic question about the region. What is region in European policy? In European Union, there is classification of different territories. It is called that's a system. It is statistical data, and when we are speaking about the region, it can be administrative unit or it can be not administrative unit, but the key indicator is population from 800,000 up to 3 million. So this is considered a region, and in the framework of our reform of territorial division, we shouldn't change the lines of our region. They are within the system. All our regions are more than 800,000 and less than 3 million. Speaking about Ukrainian system, what we wanted to do and what we actually got. Starting 2008, the Ministry of Regional Development, through the technical assistant programs, we developed first the concept of reforming of the state regional policy, then developed the basic law that was mentioned and all this management system to identify what it should be. The law was adopted in 2015, but in 2008 we started pilot projects to test the system. At these elements, there are 5 of them. The first one is planning, from both from bottom from top to bottom and from bottom to top. So this work was carried out for a long time. Then next, financing of the regional development. And in 2012, the Fund of Regional Development was created to finance the projects of the development that allow to increase economic and social benefit for the region in order that each person would feel comfortable in each region. And the same level of quality should be in any part of Ukraine. Then the realization of this policy, how to reach those goals that are in the plans. And in the world, the implementation of such policies is in the project, so you should establish goals, long-term, medium, and long-term, short-term goals. So first, you should create a project. You should formulate your goal. Then the fourth element is the monitoring and the assessment of influence.
We should not just allocate money for the project. We should check and double check whether the project initiated and implemented the changes for which it was designed and intended. Thus, we need the controlling agencies like the Ministry of Regional Development. We have also the intra-governmental commission. You asked how the state regional strategy has to be implemented, not just in the regions. Each ministry, each line ministry within the scope of its responsibility are responsible for some national investments, some investment projects at the national level. They should coordinate these investments in each region with the regional development strategy. If we do not coordinate these things, this will be total chaos. We won't reach symbiosis and synergy in regional development and implementation in local projects. Unfortunately, as of today, we lack this coordination and this coherent, comprehensive approach. All the agencies should refer to the regional development strategy, investing money into their line projects in some specific region. Thus, we have taken this direction this approach in our development. Thus, we have requested each region to develop its strategy, and we have shaped this state fund for regional development. But all the elements of this overall scheme should be workable, should be functional in order to bring this system into life. If we would not explain what we wish to see from the regional level, now Oblast administration, they request the local communities to do something, but they do not announce the competitions of projects. They do not invite people to submit such projects. They just continue to work as they got accustomed to work in the past. We lack good projects. And today I suspect that because of the lack of good local projects, we won't be able to use the allocated money. The investment policy here, and the investment-based approach is needed. Without a coherent implementation of some specific investment policy, keeping in mind some objectives and goals and measurable indicators, we won't be able to launch this radical reform. Let us look at the year 2015. I was surprised to see that in that year, 2015, 2.9 billion hryvnia, which were allocated for the same fund for regional development, they were not used. When I ask the question why those money were not used, I hear several versions. First, the regional authorities were weak and they were unable to use this money. Also from local communities, I heard that the deadlines were not realistic. The problem the system which was launched in 2015 was launched a bit late. Actually, now when the money are allocated by May 1st, all the regions have to finalize competitions of the project. So on May 1st, all the projects selected at the regional level should be submitted to the Ministry of the Region. While in 2015, this was not done on time. Unfortunately, we revealed that the money is not the problem. During all the years of independent Ukraine, we used to hear, we lack from the regions, we lack money, we lack money. Now we allocate a lot for the regional development, but this is the second year in a row when they fail to demonstrate viable projects. And we continue to explain that we have to, in 2015, you have to submit the projects by 2016. The project for 2016 were submitted in 2016. For example, the Commission selecting for the projects for this year was awarding the projects even in November. So when the regions keep saying, provide us with some money, we know what to do with this money. In reality, they do not know what to do them. Whether local communities could submit projects directly, no, they submit them to the oblast, and the projects should fit to the oblast strategic development, and then they could be submitted to the ministry. Could it be that the communities have the good projects, but they stack at the oblast level and are not submitted? Yes, it could be so. In Odessa, they have a unique strategy development. They have more strategic goals than all the neighboring oblasts. But despite that numerous strategic goals, they have not passed any project except Odessa-Reni Highway, which is not part of the Odessa Oblast strategy development. They have the strategic objective, by the way, in Odessa Oblast, open borders. And I keep thinking with the in Lviv Oblast, they have open borders. While the Odessa Oblast has strategic goal as energy independence. What does it mean? I also do not understand. the state strategy has its priorities. Some people from Oblast attend neighboring countries, but when they come home, they start to write down something which became out of date 30 years ago. So currently, when we look at all those drafts of strategic oblast development. Just imagine the Carpathia Oblast submitted strategic project which amounts to 400,000 hryvnia. This is the secondary, the road of secondary importance in a small village for 400 residents. We should set the rules for oblasts and request them to produce internally coherent strategies. The strategies should be developed in line with specific rules, and all the projects in the region, all the local communities in the region should be able to look at the local oblast strategy and set priorities for the projects. So our institutional capacity in the regions is drastically lagging behind the central governmental reform of the regional development. Probably you have a slide which shows a split of state regional fund in 2012. One of the functions of this fund is to allocate money for the regions based on the quality of their development funds. Look, in 2012, just two oblasts, Donetsk and Odessa Oblast, received almost all the money from the state budget, while all the other oblasts got almost nothing. Now, no one of the regions could not get less or more than it is provided by the general allocation formula. And the only problem for each region is to present good projects for spending and for proper use of that money. Well, how the money were allocated. I do not remember now, in 2010 or in 2011, this money were called subvention for social and economic development of the region. Almost in 2010 or 2011, almost half of that money for regional development was allocated to Autonomous Republic of Crimea. This was the overhaul of 4 streets in the city of Simferopol, procurement of trolley buses for Simferopol, and repair of the road in result of landslides. I think that I have answered your question. Once I visited the session of the budgetary committee. It was back in 2009, and the budgetary committee discussed the list of objects. The statement was that we would not vote for this because 700,000 hryvnia has to be allocated for this club. 150,000 for design. How do you know the design will cost that money? Because my guys will do it. I know definitely. And I travel a lot around Ukraine, and I see how many buildings are repaired on the cost of the state budget. And unfortunately, people in that locality say, this is our MP who did this, but these are money from the state budget. Is it a real plate or no? No, this is a collage. We are ready to produce such a plate, such a plaque, but the decision should be made that each money, that each object is built for the money allocated by the state, and thus the state will be seen everywhere, because this is the state which invests to the local development. And by the way, the things go like this everywhere in Europe. This is done like this everywhere in Europe. The visualization of the state money should be presented at all the objects. If this is a highway, we have the entire booklet describing how this visualization should be done, in what colors, at the end of the road, at the beginning of the road, along the road, everywhere. This will be the task for our ministry to support this initiative and to demonstrate the role of the state in Ukraine to make it visual. Thank you, Anatoly. I would like to add, the ministry had developed a special resolution about raising awareness of population by means of such signs installed at all the objects funded from the budget. But your resolution has to be approved by the cabinet. Yes, it will be approved tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. I have heard a question from Valentyna, but I'm not sure she is here. Also, we have journalists from Mykolaiv and Mariupol and Severodonetsk. Whether you have any questions? Severodonetsk has no questions. Do we have Mariupol? Do we have no questions from Mariupol? By the way, Mykolaiv Oblast last year was mentioned as one of the best. They returned the biggest amount of money to the state budgets. Maybe journalists do not know this, and people in the oblast do not know this, that state money for the oblast development were not used. Mykolaiv. We have a question from Mykolaiv. whether civil society organizations can apply for the funds from the state fund for regional development. Now, only local self-government bodies, local self-government executive bodies and local municipalities. This is as of the moment. Also, we can assist in development of the rural areas. We are thinking how to allocate money for cooperative societies, but civil society organizations cannot be an applicants to this fund. Please cooperate as civil society organizations with your local self-government authorities. Submit joint projects aimed at the development of your local territories, and thus you will get this money. I do not understand what's going on with Mariupol. And one more question. As far as I understand that there is connection with the state strategies of regional development and with the fund or state fund for local development, and how this is related to the master plans of the cities and towns. The strategic planning has two dimensions. Strategic planning of development and strategic planning of space. If we have the strategic development of Odessa Oblast, also when we speak about strategic development, we should think about recreational use of local beaches and to prevent a situation when the local beaches are covered with some industrial enterprises, sand production facilities, etc. In our today's conditions, we have the problem with the united territorial communities. They should have their own strategies and plan for the entire territory, because they cannot produce just 50 master plans. They should plan this space. They should design this space correctly. That's why we produced amendments to the law on local self-governance, on the planning of outlay in space in the cities and towns. When we look at all the projects of regional development in the EU, they have 4 categories of projects. The projects related to space, but before any project is adopted, the master plan of the territory should be in place. These are very expensive projects about, so to say, hard infrastructure. Another type of projects, these are projects aiming people which raise employment, training, social issues, inclusivity issues. The third type of projects are business capacity building for SMEs primarily, and the fourth type of projects are of managerial nature. Unfortunately, as of today, we have just first category of that projects, which are more or less working, functional, while 3 others do not function. Am I right that there could be a project, the planning of the oblast? For each oblast, we have the master plan of each oblast. We are speaking now about lower level of districts. a part of the oblast territories where they have specific development issues. When we studied the situation in Kiev Oblast is rather dynamic, very rich, but in Kiev Oblast we have some pieces, some territories which are very poor, and we have enclosed them into a special project. There should, for example, north of the Kiev Oblast, which should be developed separately. Let us discuss the year 2017.
There are some threats connected with the money for this fund. So what are the prospects and what are the threats? Maybe this law was voted for because the voting was for this day. This was 5131 draft law, and in this draft law they proposed that the State Fund of Regional Development was formed not from the overall budget that is stated in the in current legislation, but from special fund. A special fund does not have guaranteed sources, and there are no guaranteed sources. So in the framework of the regional policy, it is important to have good forecast. If we do not understand that this year we have money and the next year we won't have money, so we won't be able to make plans, to plan projects. Thus, the system won't work. And in this draft law, these changes are envisaged, and they say that these changes are only about this year, 2017, because there is such source that is not only for the fund, but for other areas such as special confiscation, for example, and to return the money by one law that was stolen from Ukraine. And they believe that in this way they can provide the money for the fund, and this is a negative norm for the fund. If it is adopted, we won't have assurance that this fund will have money. So today they are going to vote that 10% of the funds should be developed, should be for sports and facilities and infrastructure, and it breaks a systemic approach, because it envisages that the regions make their plans and identify the activity that will provide development. And there are not many regions that need 10% for sports facilities. The part of the fund that work, we are speaking that this fund should be finance the state strategy of regional development, and such proposals were made by my colleagues and by the ministry, and we submitted such recommendations, but the system is not implemented now. The fund provides funding for the projects that are made from the grassroots level, and it is incorrect to create a quota principle. And about top to bottom, so is it related to the policy of coercion policy? There is such a document as plan of actions on realization of regional development, and this plan was developed into 5 programs of regional development, and one of them is a solidarity program that is directed to this all Ukrainian cohesion. So cohesion. So my colleague is one of the authors of such a program. So this is a comprehensive program, the creation of interregional projects and projects sharing projects, creation of information resources for many regions, and this is all that seem that unite Ukraine. So we can take simple thing. There is Dnieper River that goes from north to south, and our enemy says that Ukraine is divided by the Dnieper River into parts, but there should be a project that shows that the Dnieper really unites Ukraine, because many regions, they differ among themselves, but if you put something into the Dnieper River in Kievshchina, it will go to Odessa. So such a program, it provides opportunity for different entities, and they said about NGOs, they can be catalyst of such creative projects. And these projects are not the projects of solid infrastructure. These are projects that are directed to people. And when we are speaking about using the instruments of fund, the projects that can be not expensive but efficient. If we take Poltava Oblast, Poltava town, there are a lot of facilities that potentially are interesting for tourism. And if you have a guide and he can show you the city, after 10 minutes you won't speak to him, and in the majority of the hotels, the situation is the same. The small project that is directed to improve the staff who work in service, it will increase tourism attractiveness of the city and will bring more money. And this we should understand. If we understand the strategy like this, and we will make appropriate projects, everything will be okay. And if someone tries to lobby some quotas, such as 10% for sports, no one is against sports. But if we have priorities identified in the strategy, and oblasts were 150 million, 10% is 15 million, so 10% for sports infrastructure. Other projects of sports infrastructure, whether 15 million are needed for this, and maybe they just will bring this money back to the fund unused. That's why we shouldn't do it like this. This is not logical. Do we have also soft projects directed to unite regions? Do you have an example that was implemented or supported by money? We don't have this, because only now, in the framework of the budget support provided by the European Union, there will be funds that can be used for these projects. Because the strategy exists, strategic goal is identified, but in the state budget there is zero money for this. That's why we proposed in the plans of the government for 2016, there was it was envisaged to increase the for 1.5% the money for the fund for the realization of the programs directed to all Ukrainian unity, and not to take this percent from the region, but to create 0.5% from the top. And as Yuriy said, from top to bottom, from bottom to top. And this decision was not cancelled. It is in the action plan, and the Ministry of Region and Ministry of Finance are responsible for this, but it is not taken into account in the budget, and the fund was actually, the funds of the fund was reduced. And the question to Nadiya, we understand that there is an acute problem of training, what we said today, and there should be people who understand how to develop regional policy. What are the plans of the ministry? How to reach this gap? We conduct training. We have the program for this. And for whom is this training? For representatives of the region. We invite to the conferences the applicants, the local government representatives, but this is not enough. We want, and now we have such a wish to envisage in the fund of the regional development, state regional development fund, the money for training. These are expenses, and the Ministry of Finance do not react on this. They say that these are expenses should not be envisaged in such a project, but we won't be able to train people without it and to create real projects in order to develop the regions. And we asked to 2%, but the Ministry of Finance didn't take into account our proposals, and for 2017 they only provide money for the development, but they do not provide money for training. We won't be able to use this and to include experts to provide information to our applicants. And the next year we are going to continue training, and we will invite different programs, and I hope that we will continue our work with Yuriy and Anatoliy, who helped us a lot in this issue. But there is no systemic training. We were not able to reach this because the Ministry of Finance didn't take into account our proposals. So the instruments of training are in the hands of Anatoliy. So this is like a piano hidden in the bushes. So the training module, strategic planning in the community, and external and internal resources for the development of the community. So we have such manuals. So simply and with a lot of schemes, in this book it is shown how to prepare strategy, how to prepare the projects for the fund, and there are also references to the sites. There are some samples and a lot of information how to do it correctly. But state should be more active. They should train and retrain people to provide refresher training, and where decisions made in 2009, 2010, such decisions were made, but then they were just buried, and we should return to this. We got resources, but we have a gap with the institutional capabilities and in order to use these funds. So do we have questions? No questions, thank you. And I have a feeling that we have a lot of issues, we have a lot of problems to face, but we have a lot of opportunities.